In this video, we're explaining everyone's favorite part of Death Note in around 15 minutes or less. Okay, so part 2 of Death Note begins in England, at the same orphanage where L grew up. The name of this place is Wammy's house, and after L was killed, his computer sent them a message confirming his death. Inside Wammy's house were 2 candidates to replace L as the world's best detective, and their codenames were Near and Mello. The original plan was that L would choose one to be his successor, but since he died sooner than expected, they had to decide for themselves. As a side note, L was only 25 years old, so it's kind of weird that this was even a thing, considering that these kids are, about 10 years younger than him, but it is what it is. Although Near was willing to work as a team, Mello rejects the idea and leaves Wammy's house to hunt down Kira himself. 5 years later, Near then completes his own Kira investigation from scratch, because remember, when L died, all of the research he did was erased. In a meeting with the US president, Near presents his findings, which reveals 2 major things. 1. Kira kills people using a notebook of death, which is currently in the hands of the Japanese police. 2. The Japanese police have covered up L's death, and for the last 5 years, an unknown person in the MPA has been pretending to be L. For these reasons, the MPA obviously can't be trusted, and so the US creates their own team to hunt down Kira, known as the SPK. Shortly after the SPK is created, one of their agents heads to Japan, where he just straight up tells Light's dad to hand over the notebook. Unsurprisingly, that tactic doesn't work, but what the SPK find out is that someone has recently kidnapped the head of the Japanese police. As it turns out, the person behind this kidnapping was Mello, who also knows about the Death Note. Similar to the original L, Mello was willing to do unethical things and work with unethical people in order to catch Kira, and in this case he teamed up with the American Mafia. These criminals are the ones who kidnapped the director, and the plan was to give him back in exchange for the notebook. Of course, Light was never going to let that happen, and so he uses his own personal Death Note, the one he took from Rem, to kill the director. By doing this, the police now had no reason to give their notebook away, as Light didn't want this power to fall into the hands of criminals. However, before the director died, he revealed that Soichiro Yagami is the highest ranking officer on the Kira investigation. For that reason, Mello's next target was Soichiro's daughter, Sayu Yagami, who gets kidnapped immediately and taken to America. This time around, Light wasn't so eager to kill the hostage, and so using his identity as L, he asked the SPK for help. As we know, Near doesn't trust the new L or the Japanese police, but he agrees to help anyway since he believed it would bring them closer to Kira. Soon after, members of the NPA separately travel to America, with Light's dad being in charge of the Death Note. In the airport, Soichiro is then approached by Mello's team, who force him to get on a different plane that lands in the desert. With help from the SPK, Light was able to see what was going on through a satellite until Soichiro is taken underground. This underground lair is where Sayu was being held, and at this point, the only way for Light to stop the exchange would be to murder his sister before the notebook is handed over. In the end, he can't bring himself to do it, and his family make it out alive while the Mafia escapes with the notebook. Later that same day, Mello uses the Death Note to kill basically everyone in the SPK, with the exception of Near and a couple others. Why did he do this? Well, from Mello's perspective, catching Kira is a competition between him and Near, so doing this gives him a major advantage. Also, something the anime didn't explain very well is that Mello had a spy within the SPK who he used to get the names and faces of all the other agents, except for Near, and this spy was killed alongside the other agents. Now, switching over to the Shinigami realm, 6 years ago, a Shinigami called Sido lost his Death Note. This lost notebook was then found by Ryuk, who dropped it into the human realm just for fun. That Death Note is the original one that Light picked up, and is now in the hands of Mello. Unfortunately for Sido, his lifespan was now running out, and so to stop himself from dying, he urgently needed it back. For context, Shinigami can increase their lifespans by taking life from humans, which is why Sido heads down to the human realm to find his Death Note. At the same time, after being defeated by Mello, Light thinks of a plan to get the notebook back. Back in part 1, we found out that when a human has Shinigami eyes, they can see anyone's lifespan except another Death Note owner. That's why in this scene, he makes Misa use her eyes to examine a list of known Mafia members. Luckily for them, one of the people on this list was Cal Snyder, whose lifespan didn't show up. What this means is that Cal must have been the first person on Mello's team to touch the Death Note, technically making him the owner. With this information, Light decides to control Cal, as the Death Note allows you to control someone's actions for over 3 weeks before their death. Using this, Light forces Snyder to send him Mello's address, and this causes 2 things to happen. Firstly, Sido actually sees the address and flies over there to find his Death Note. There he reveals himself to the Mafia, and during their conversation, he mentions how the 13-day rule, the one that says you have to kill at least once every 13 days, is fake. Secondly, now that he had the address of Mello's hideout, Light writes down the names of all known Mafia members, but importantly, he didn't have Mello's real name or his face. Therefore, he couldn't just kill the Mafia straight away, because if he did, Mello would just escape with the notebook. That's why Light scheduled for the Mafia to die in the near future, and on that day, he wanted the NPA to instantly swoop in. How did he convince them to do this? Well, on the phone, he got Misa to pretend to be Kira. Kira told the police that he didn't want criminals having the notebook, and he gave them details of Mello's address as well as the specific time that the Mafia would die. He told the police that it was their only chance to get the notebook back, and the MPA played along since they also didn't want gangsters having a murder notebook. To seal the deal, Kira sent the police his own personal death note and specifically tells them to make the Shinigami Eye deal. On the day of the mission, Light's dad is the one who makes the deal with Ryuk because he felt guilty for handing over their original death note. When most of the Mafia is then killed by Kira, the NPA breaks into Mello's hideout and quickly finds the notebook, like it pretty much happens straight away. In this moment, they were all ready to just leave and turn back, but it was Light who urged them to keep going because he wanted Mello dead. The mistake here is that Light should have known his dad isn't the type to kill someone, and although Soichiro sees Mello's real name with the Shinigami eyes, he doesn't write it down. This hesitation is what leads to him being shot, with Mello narrowly escaping by blowing the place up. Following that, Soichiro gets taken to the hospital, where for the first time he sees his son with the Shinigami eyes. In normal circumstances, this would have proven that Light is Kira, because usually Light's lifespan can't be seen. However, on this one occasion, his lifespan could be seen, because Light gave up ownership of his death note before sending it to the NPA. By giving up ownership, he should have also lost his memories, but he avoided this by physically strapping Misa's notebook to his body. As a consequence, Soichiro died believing that his son couldn't be Kira, which helped to verify Light's innocence to the rest of the team. When Soichiro passed away, ownership of his notebook transferred back to his son, given that Light was holding it at the time. That said, when it comes to the original death note that Mello had, Sido finally takes it back. Now, after seeing Kira and the MPA work so closely together, Near suspects that the new L might be Kira himself. To be specific, he thought there was a 7% chance that this was the case, but his suspicion increases after receiving a visit from Mello. Mello arrived at the SPK to retrieve the only photo of him that exists, because if Kira found this photo, then he might be killed. In exchange, Mello reveals two things that he learned from his time with the Death Note. 1. Whoever owns the notebook will be attached to a Shinigami, and 2. Some of the rules inside are fake. With this info, Near contacts the MPA, and the purpose of this call was to make the other MPA agents suspect L. During the discussion, Near basically forced Light to admit the 13-day rule is fake, proving that Ryuk was willing to lie on his behalf. This leads to Aizawa questioning everything, and pretty soon, Light decides that he has to kill Near. By threatening the US president, Kira discovers where the SPK is based and uses this angry mob to force them to leave the building. The plan was that Misa would kill the SPK with her Shinigami eyes, but Near manages to hide his face by blending in with the police. Once he escapes, the detective has a meeting with Aizawa, who explains the existence of Shinigami eyes and accidentally confirms that L is Light Yagami. Aware of all the growing suspicion, Light begins a new strategy to protect himself. Firstly, he has Misa give up ownership of her notebook, meaning she loses all memories related to the Death Note. This was great because even if she's secretly recorded or questioned, she can never give anything away because she doesn't know anything. Next, Misa's notebook was sent to a guy called Teru Mikami, who's a man that worships Kira. Although Light didn't know him in person, Teru made countless TV appearances where it was clear he understands what Kira wants. That's why Light gave him the notebook with certain instructions, because he wanted Mikami to act on his behalf. Straight away, Teru made a deal for the Shinigami eyes and began killing people at times when it literally couldn't be Light. Additionally, he chose a new spokesperson for Kira, someone that could express Kira's belief to the general population. The candidate he chose was TV presenter Kiyomi Takada, who by pure coincidence was Light's old girlfriend. Back in college, he briefly went out with Kiyomi around the same time that Misa forced her way into his life. Inside the MPA, Light doesn't try to hide this connection. In fact, he offers to use Takada to help with the investigation. The general idea was that he'd take advantage of their relationship and gradually convince her to betray Kira. Of course, in reality, he was doing the complete opposite, and during these meetings, he revealed that he was Kira, promised to make Takada the goddess of the new world, and used her to secretly communicate with Mikami. Meanwhile, the SPK traveled to Japan, where Near basically challenged Kira to try and kill him. By this point, Near knew that someone else had the notebook, and he referred to this new person as ex-Kira. Mikami was his main suspect due to his multiple TV appearances with Takada, and an SPK agent called Giovanni was sent to follow him. Now, this is where things get a bit complicated, so I'm going to break down Near's plan to catch Light and then Light's plan to kill Near. Starting with Near's plan, after observing Mikami, the SPK noticed several things. For a start, Teru openly uses the Death Note in public, confirming that yeah, he is ex-Kira, and that he has the Shinigami eyes. More than that, he follows the exact same routine every week, going to work and the gym at specific times and never deviating from this schedule. With this info, Giovanni broke into Mikami's gym locker at a time when he wouldn't come out and took pictures from inside the Death Note. Near needed these photos so he could analyze the pattern because he suspected that someone like Mikami would have a routine for his murders. This theory was correct, as ex-Kira filled exactly one page every day, but never any more than that. Based on this, Near got Giovanni to replace pages in the notebook so that from the 28th of January, none of the pages would work. Once the Death Note pages were swapped out for just normal pages, Near messaged the MPA to set up a meeting on the 28th where he claimed the Kira investigation would come to an end. Attending this meeting would be all members of the SPK and all members of L's team, which is nearly everyone who knows about the notebook, with the exception of Mello. Near knew that Kira would never give up the chance to kill all of these people, but it would only be possible with Mikami's Shinigami eyes. Near's plan was that ex-Kira would arrive and unknowingly write their names on the fake page. This way, everyone survives, and if Light is Kira, then his name will be the only one not written down. However, from the day that Near arrived in Japan and challenged him, Light had always been one step ahead. From the start, he knew that SPK would try to tamper with the notebook. In fact, he actively tried to make it happen. His plan started here, when he told ex-Kira to create a fake copy of the Death Note while putting the real one in storage. Mikami was then instructed to use this fake notebook in public so that anyone watching him would believe it's the real Death Note. In reality, Teru would just use his eyes to see a person's name, and would then send that name and a picture of their face to Takada. Light had arranged things so that Takada had pages from the real notebook, and for the whole time that Near was in Japan, she was the real ex-Kira. Meanwhile, Mikami was told to maintain his usual routine by writing one page every day in the fake Death Note. Light knew that as long as Teru maintained his daily schedule, the SPK would eventually try to tamper with the notebook. That's why every day Mikami would check the fake Death Note with a microscope for any signs of tampering. When Giovanni then replaced the pages, he noticed that same day and immediately told Takada, who then told Light. In this scene, Light realized that he'd outsmarted Near, and he gave his minions the details about the upcoming meeting with the SPK. If things had stayed this way, then on the 28th of January, Near would have lost, given that Mikami would have killed the SPK and the NPA using the real notebook that he'd hidden at the bank. However, the reason this didn't happen was all thanks to Mello. 2 days before the big meeting, Mello kidnapped Takada, and although his exact reason for doing this isn't said, we can assume it's because she's Kira's official spokesperson. If Mello had survived, he likely would have questioned her for information, but it's also possible that his real intention was to help Near by forcing Kira to act in a way that wasn't planned. With Takada being taken, Light had no way to contact Mikami, and likewise, Mikami had no way to find out what Light really wanted. As a consequence, they both acted independently, with Light killing Kiyomi with a scrap of his Death Note, and Mikami breaking his routine to go to the bank and also kill her with the real notebook. Why did they do this? Well, thanks to Soichiro finding out Mello's real name, Light had warned Takada that she might run into him. Using her own scrap of the notebook, Kiyomi then killed him by giving him a heart attack, and both Kira and Mikami were aware that she did this. If the SPK had found him like this, they'd realize that she is the real ex-Kira, and so to erase the evidence, both of them wrote down that she dies in a fire. That said, by breaking his routine, Mikami led the SPK to the existence of the real notebook. Giovanni took the real one and replaced it with a completely fake one that he created. In this way, on the day of the big meeting, Mikami arrived thinking that he had the real notebook, but when he wrote down their names, everyone still survived. What made this especially cringe is that when Light thought Near was about to die, he openly started gloating about how he'd won. This made things pretty awkward when the murders didn't happen, and after that, Mikami confirmed that Light is Kira by looking directly at him and saying, "Why won't they die? I did everything you told me." Following this, we literally see Light go through the stages of grief as he angrily lashes out at Near and denies any involvement with Mikami or Kira. His mind then races trying to think of a way out of this, but after realizing he's trapped, he fully embraces his evil persona. As Kira, he tries to bargain with the SPK, arguing that they shouldn't kill him given that he's reduced the global crime rate by over 70%. His point was that no one except him could have fixed the world, and that he has to live to keep things going in the right direction. When that doesn't work, he then tries to distract everyone, while at the same time trying to kill Near with a scrap of the notebook. This leads to him getting shot multiple times by Matsuda, but in the anime he still tries to run away after this. The manga ending was a lot different as he tries to make a deal with Ryuk, but in both cases, the Shinigami realizes that Light is cooked and decides to kill him that day. On screen now is a video where I explain the next Death Note users after Light, so I'd recommend checking that out if you want to know who it is. Also, if you enjoyed this recap, then please leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already, as we're trying to reach 500k subs in 2025. Thanks for watching as always, and until the next one, peace out.